following breaking news at the Supreme Court, which has just ruled that the Trump administration can enforce the travel ban. NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams is standing by outside the Supreme Court. Pete?
Well, so this is version 3 of the so-called travel ban. This was announced in late September. This was the new restrictions on visas from certain countries. For the most part, it continued the travel ban, except for Sudan also put some additional restrictions on North Korea, Venezuela, and other countries. And after it began to be enforced, the lower courts in both Hawaii and Maryland said it couldn't be enforced against close family members, grandparents, cousins, aunts and uncles, that kind of thing. Today, the Supreme Court lifted that restriction, allowing the government to enforce it completely, no exception for family members. Only 2 justices, Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Sonia Sotomayor, said they would have left those exemptions in place.
Pete, this is a huge victory for the president, but he has said that this version doesn't go far enough. He likes version 1.0 and 2.0 better. Does this give him some legal footing to go back to those more severe bans?
No, I don't think so. I think the more severe bans are, to a large extent, a dead letter. But what I do think is that remember, it was the Supreme Court that initially upheld the family restriction on the old travel ban and said you had to have a restriction for close family members. Now they're saying you don't. So this may be a sign that this latest version of the travel restriction, this visa ban, which the government said it put in place after carefully checking how every country in the world handles the visa application for people who want to come here, it may be a sign that the Supreme Court is going to be much easier on the administration when inevitably this case gets here. It's a good sign for the administration, I think.
And did it come down to simply seeing this as something that was clearly any president's authority to do?
We don't know, because it was a very brief order. It simply said the request for a stay on these injunctions is granted, and we'll see how it plays out in the lower courts. And then when it gets up here, the Supreme Court said we'll take a second look at it. But they didn't give any reason for what they did today.
Pete Williams at the Supreme Court, thank you so much. Quickly, Kimberly Atkins, any surprise?
I think that is a little surprising. I mean, we did see, just as you said, that in the past, particularly this one restriction that, the grandmother exception, that it seemed overly broad, and they left that, allowed people to continue to do that. So in that sense, it is a bit of a surprise. It's also a bit of a surprise to me because last week, the tweets that the president, the retweets of these purported anti-Muslim videos, the first thing I thought about was that that's going to make it a lot harder for the administration to say, hey, we're not anti-Muslim. We're doing this for national security. It seemed to really be a big blow to that case. It might still be at the lower court, but the fact that the Supreme Court is going in the opposite direction is good news for the White House.
And,
sure.
and some courts have suggested that the president's tweets get to his state of mind, but obviously not the Supreme Court. All right, when we come back, the FBI defends itself from the law and order president who spent the weekend